so we have obviously the Elite doing kind of the NWO thing last week, beating up Tony Khan, sending him packing, Jungle Boy turning on Tony, the scapegoat, all that sort of stuff. Then you have Tony hamming it up with the neck brace during the NFL draft and stuff, and trying to get attention that way of I got the neck brace and and okay. And now you have the Elite this week beating up Kenny Omega. They're the heel authority figures. They can make matches and decide what's going to happen on the show or whatever. And the best way that I can put this, and I know you've talked about it a little bit on audio, so I'll go first, then obviously you can give your thoughts that I think you have given a little bit, is that I think they're doing a good job with it. I think the Elite as these asshole heels and suits is good. I like it. I think they're doing a good job with it. I think Tony getting beaten up and hamming it up with the neck brace during the NFL draft is good. I think that was a wise move for him to do that, to ham it up and wear that neck brace and be seen on TV with the neck brace and all that sort of stuff. And, them beating up Kenny Omega was a great angle at the end of Dynamite. I think it's all good. I just don't want any of it. I just don't need any of it. And I think I don't know if it's an us problem. I don't know if there's other people that agree with us, but it's like, I've seen this same authority figure / owner as an on-screen character / big heel group running ruckshaw. I've seen that a lot, and I don't think I need it again. And I just think it's you talked about on your Thursday Dynamite review that they're not breaking any new ground here with this. It's an angle that's as old as time. But to me, that's kind of the problem, is that they're not breaking any new ground. And it's a story that's been told 1,000 times. And it's a tale as old as time of, we got a little bit of the Four Horsemen in here. We got a little bit of the NWO in here. We got a little bit of, the heel authority figures out of WWE. We have Mr. McMahon, the Tony Khan role. You have this sort of, we've seen this time and time and time and time again. And we've been very clear from the beginning. From the beginning of this company, from the moment they announced this company until today, we have not wavered from this whatsoever at any point ever. I thought AEW was going to tell wrestling stories differently. I thought it was going to be different than what I've seen over the last 30 years, 40 years really at this point. And it's just not. And I guess that's okay. That's fine. I can still enjoy it because I still think they're doing a good job with it. But I can't say that I'm actually into this story, because it's the same shit. I've seen this story done 15, 20 times in my many, many years, my many decades of watching wrestling. And I really, truly, for some reason, thought that AEW would and could and should be different and break new ground and tell different stories and tell stories in different ways and be different than what we've seen, but they're not. So now you just have to rely on, okay, they have really good matches and they're going to do these angles better than other companies have done them. And that's fine. And that's kind of where I'm at with AEW right now. I think they're doing a good job with this story. I really do. I think the Elite's doing a good job with it. I just can't tell you. I can't come on here and go, oh my God, what great. Because it's the same shit I've seen 1,000 times. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. That's my big picture thought about the Elite's thing and Tony Khan being an on-screen character and stuff is, I wish it didn't come to this, but it's come to this. So now it's just like, all right, I got it. It's fine. Whatever. My hope that they were going to be different is kind of gone. And now they're offering me better in-ring. Obviously better in ring. I like the way they tell their stories a little bit better. So that's good. That's fine. I'll hang my hat on that. It's just my hope that this was going to be different is now completely lost. It's the same shit. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, that mirrors a lot of what I said in the Dynamite review today. Yeah, it's been 5 years, and it's the thing about it is, I'm not going to repeat all the points you just made, which were a lot of the same points I made. So for a lot of people, it would be repeating them twice who listen to the Dynamite review. But if the storyline does take off and it's a success, they're only going to lean harder into it. You have to consider this. When MJF really took control of the top of the card around last March, when they started building the four pillar feud, and then through the rest of the year with the Brochacho storyline, and then the Devil, and then all that nonsense, which wrapped up at World's End, literally at the end of the year on December 27th. So basically from February through all of 2023 was, a lot of the sports entertainment geared top of the card, which I complained about incessantly and talked about at length, that actually ran off paying customers and television viewers, and they still leaned into it, and they still stuck with it through the end, and never pivoted at any point. So if this storyline, which again is very much sort of the same kind of stuff we've been seeing on American wrestling television for the better part of 25 years, with the fight for power of the show and authority figures and heel authority figures.
We can't be fired, and this is what our contract says and stuff. That stuff's that really grinded me, that they like the Elite's like, we can't be fired because we're EVP, so we can make the matches because Tony's not here. And I was just like, oh, really?
And then the promoter being a character, and Tony has kind of straddled the line with that, but never crossed it. Now he's full on crossed it. You know what I mean? He's a character on the show. And I guess you could tell in our voices, it's more disappointment than anything.
Right. I think it's good. Like, I want to preface that I think they're doing a good job with it. I just don't want it.
Yes.
I just don't want it.
I'm not interested. Yeah. It's just the same old. And as I've been saying for 5 years, if you want to be an alternative, if you want to be a challenger brand, you have to do something different, bring something different to the table, because you're not going to beat the dominant brand at their own game. And this is kind of straight out of that playbook. And it's, it's disappointing from that standpoint. Can they do it better? I don't know. It's just the way I look at AEW now, from the Continental Classic till about a couple of months ago, I thought they really were getting back on track with their own identity. Where the best wrestle. They even came up with a tagline, and and now this kind of is a step backwards on that. And it's maybe it's just a situation where no one is smart enough to come up with a way to present American wrestling in a different way. Maybe it's just been ingrained too long that this is how you do it, and this is how it's always going to be done, right down to having they
did, though. The problem is they did. The problem is they showed us they could.
Yeah, it's true. And it's just it reverts back. And I don't know if it's Tony feeling the crunch of the ratings kind of having stagnated, right? They still are like the number one entertainment show every Wednesday, just finishing behind the basketball and finishing behind the basketball and the hockey when it's playoff season. So it's not like, from that standpoint, they're sliding down the chart. The ratings are stagnant.
Right.
They're just not growing.
Well, we said this last year, though, at the time when you were talking about the MJF stuff. More people were watching when you were an alternative and when you were different.
Right.
So what possesses you to then decide, we got to be like, those other guys? And Tony even said, like, I think he even went on record of saying, we did some experimenting. We saw what worked and what didn't work or whatever. And they must not see this as the same. And I don't know. It's just, to me, it's again, I think they're doing a good job of it. It's just like, man, I really am just disappointed that this is just, we can't tell different stories in wrestling. Just, we are completely incapable of it. And a lot of it is, look at who he's hired. Look at all the last 2-3 years of hires in that company. All of them have been ex-WWE guys, ex-writers, ex-production guys, ex-agents, all that sort of stuff. If you're saying we're not going to have agents and saying we're going to be different, or we're going to hire outside of the it's just, it's just the same people telling the same story. And I've been complaining about that. Go back and listen to this show 10 fucking years ago. I said, God damn it, can we get some new people to write wrestling and talk about wrestling and do, it's just the same people writing about it, the same people. And the problem is, when WWE has this power vortex that they've had for the last 20 years, is everybody comes from that system. And that's what happened to TNA after a while. After a while, they started hiring a bunch of ex-WWE people that said, this is the way to do it. You got to do it this way. And more we now have multiple generations now that just know one way. And the only way is that way. And it sucks because, for 28 years now, it feels like, or 30 years now, we felt like we were just doing the same thing over and over again. And some of the stuff was in the territories too. The, on-screen owner of the company, that was in the territories too. But come on, man, we can tell different stories, right? I thought we could, but I guess we can't.
I don't know. I mean, maybe we don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I guess we don't.
I feel like, here's the other thing. You sign Okada, Will Ospreay, and Mercedes Moné for what I assume is a combined 8 figures per year.
Oh God, yes.
let's not get 10 figures per, geez, combined 8 figures per, but
Okada money's pretty good. See why he moved up from Japan.
Why aren't you just pushing all three of them to the moon? That I'm a little confused about. You have Mercedes pursuing a secondary title in the mid card. You have Will Ospreay now pursuing a secondary title in the mid card. And when I think everyone would agree that he feels like the hottest guy in the company. Rich, what happens when you wait too long when someone feels hot?
Yeah.
How many times have we seen that happen? People, they're not super patient and they start to respond at the level of which you're pushing them. When you put Will Ospreay in a geek battle royal with a bunch of mid-carders and have him win it and pursue a mid-card title against a guy who does comedy shtick, well, now your fans are going to start to perceive him where you're slotting him. And I've said the same thing about Mercedes going after the mid-card title, and a secondary title. And Okada, I think they've done a great job with Okada, and they put what is still considered an important title on him as opposed to the other two, right? But he's also kind of just been sort of a background figure to the Bucks, and he does get his chance to shine and all that. And he had the face off with Omega. I think they're doing a better job with Okada than the other two.
Yes, I would agree. I think he of the three has been presented the best.
But I don't think they're doing a great job, the best job they could with any of them. They should be the hardest pushed people in the company. I mean, you're paying them all that money. They're huge stars that you won the bidding wars on. They picked you. Now pick them. What are we doing? What are we doing? Why? Two of them weren't even on the show last night. You have a 3-hour Dynamite. You could talk about the last hour being Rampage all you want. You had a 3-hour live Dynamite last night. They didn't promote that show hard at all. We didn't know what was going to be on the show other than Kenny Omega until like the day before. And then it was just a bunch of nothing middling matches. And none of the stars were there. Or very few of the stars were there. It's crazy. Swerve didn't wrestle on the show. I know he did an angle. The 3 stars I just talked about, none of them wrestled on the show, and 2 of them weren't even there. Danielson's off selling an injury. I get it, but we didn't even hear. Maybe can we hear from him? That might have been a nice little quarter-hour draw. We hear from Bryan Danielson and the status of his injury. Something. Mox is in Japan. You give him a pass on that one. But you get the idea. It's crazy how little that show was promoted last night. When they had a chance, especially coming off that huge audience that they piggybacked off of on Saturday, with coming after the NBA game, to really push the idea that Dynamite's going to be live in 3 hours on Wednesday, and it's going to be an enormous. I would have loaded that fucking show up with my best shit. It was a middling show, and then with a dead crowd, and the show ended up being a nothing show. I don't know. It's puzzling. It's puzzling. This company just, that was the theme of my review. It was like missed opportunities. I feel like there was just so many missed opportunities this week.
The biggest one that you brought up wasn't necessarily this week's Dynamite, which I thought was, whatever. It was a pretty middling show, like you said, and they did have an opportunity of 3 hours. To me, what bothered me a lot was Saturday, because Saturday was the big lead-in coming from the NBA. You were going to get a massive, massive lead-in, and they did. What was it, 1.35 million?
1.35 million people watched the first 7 minutes, and I think 835,000 people or somewhere thereabouts, give or take 10,000, were there for the first quarter hour after those opening 7 minutes.
I mean, that's great.
They had roughly 1 million people watching the first 23 minutes of the show.
And we've been very clear about this. Anytime it happens, and anytime we've done a Dynamite review, instant reaction or whatever, anytime you've done a Dynamite review, you've been clear about this. Well, things that we love, and I would do every single week on Dynamite if I could. Maybe not every week, but I would try to do it most weeks, is the second we fade up from black, I want 2 guys in the ring bouncing around, and I want Bryce Remsburg saying, ring that bell, and then ding, 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 and these guys go. There was that one where it was Claudio and Phoenix. Do you remember that? I always bring this one up. We punt, we do the, light the fuse, whatever. We go to the ring. Claudio is jumping up and down, stretching. Phoenix is jumping up and down, slapping his chest. It's 4 seconds in, and they go ring the bell, and they run at each other, and they're fucking fighting. And I was like, that is how... Man, if you're trying to get a person that hasn't watched wrestling in a while, that maybe doesn't watch wrestling, to get them after an NBA game to say, look at what the fuck we're doing here. Look at the energy that we're bringing. To me, that would hook me for life. And maybe I'm different than a lot of people, but if I saw that, that would get me involved. They decided to have Swerve come out and cut a promo. And man, I don't know. I think you can have Swerve come out there. I think you can have Swerve. If Swerve is the guy you wanted, that's fine. But have Swerve in that ring ready to go, bell ring, he beats the fuck out of a guy, whatever the hell happens, and then he can cut a promo afterwards.
Then he does his promo.
He can be Joe Cool or whatever afterwards. I have no problem with that. But action. I need action out of the gates. I can't do entrance promo. You're losing me already. If I don't watch wrestling, why the hell am I going to watch this?
They did a 20-minute promo.
Right.
They did a 20-minute promo and they had Claudio come out and set up the main event. And it didn't work because the least viewed promo was the final quarter hour of the show.
All right, we lost Joe there for a sec. We're going to get him back in a moment. There he is. All right, Joe's back. Hello.
Oh my God, how long was I gone? Jesus,
you said that you were just talking about the last quarter, how that was the lowest rated quarter.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is the Swerve promo and Claudio challenging didn't even work because the final quarter hour of the show when they did the match was just a normal Collision quarter hour, despite the fact that they had the massive lead in and they had more average viewers throughout the entire show than a typical Collision. So they did hook some people that don't normally watch. They did. The problem is that opening quarter hour didn't convince them that they needed to see Swerve in the main event against Claudio because they were all gone by the final quarter hour.
And you had a pretty much normal, even less than
a normal. Yes, the Collision, the quarter hour 8 from the week before with the Elite versus FTR and Pac did essentially the exact same number as Swerve and Claudio without the benefit of the NBA lead-in.
That can't happen.
And last week there was an ad break during that match, and there was no ad break during Swerve and Claudio. And we all know what ad breaks do. So from that standpoint, opening up Collision the way they did with the slow 20-minute promo and Swerve out there talking and Claudio, it did not work. It did not work because it did not keep those viewers until that match hit the ring. They were gone by then. Now they did the bigger number and everything and, whatever. This is not hindsight. I would not have opened the show that way. Okay. I would have either had a match ready in the ring, the most exciting match you can put together, and just had people doing high spots. Okay. Or I would have opened with a big angle. I would have done a cold open with whoever Swerve was going to wrestle on the show, beating the shit out of him as soon as he come on the air in the back. And it wouldn't have been a babyface. It wouldn't have been Claudio. You know who I would have done it with? Samoa Joe. I would have had Samoa Joe beating the living shit out of Swerve to open up that show, to set up a main event match, and then have Swerve beat Joe again and totally rear view him at that point. Joe can lose again because Joe just lost the pay-per-view. You're not even sacrificing anything. It's the perfect scenario. And then just have Swerve beat him again in the final quarter hour. But you open up with a big bloody angle, and all those NBA viewers are going, whoa, what the fuck is this? This is different. And a lot of them stuck with it anyway, even with the promo. But I think you would have stood a better chance of keeping them for the match if it would have been set up in a more compelling way. So I just think Saturday was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think Wednesday was a missed opportunity.
For sure. Yeah.
They tried something Saturday. It didn't work.
The thing I always say is wrestling can do wrestling better than anybody else. Wrestling can't do comedy better than anybody else. There's better comedies than wrestling. Wrestling can't do drama better than other drama shows. Wrestling can't do, wrestling it wants to be a variety show, but there's better variety shows out there. Nobody can do wrestling better than wrestling. And yet, for years and years and years and years and years and years and years, wrestling wants to be anything but wrestling and tries like hell to not be wrestling and to get away from wrestling and do as little wrestling as possible. And AEW is not that, they give you a lot of wrestling. We got, a 20-minute, Adam Copeland match on this week's Dynamite or whatever. But in that spot right there, that is the time to say, you know what? We're wrestling. We do wrestling better than anybody else. We're the best wrestle, like you said. I am. That thing is coming up from the NBA right into action. hot action, good at whatever it is. I don't care who it is. I don't know if it's hard hitting action or high flying action, whatever. I want action, man. I am not having a guy come out and cut a promo. That is not. You can get people talking a lot of other places and a lot of better places too. No offense to Swerve.
Yeah, listen, that's what's the 20-minute promo is whose trope?
Yeah, WWE.
It's the other company's trope.
Right.
You know, it's and again, the proof that it didn't work is go look at that quarter.
Right.
Right back to normal numbers, despite having higher numbers the rest of the show. That did not hook anyone on the match. It just didn't. So from that standpoint, it was a missed opportunity. And the Dynamite number this week, they finished the same place they always do, right behind all the playoff games from both leagues. They were up a little bit in total viewers, right around the same demo they always do. So, I don't know how much all of Tony's neck brace stuff was worth. I don't know what the lead in on Saturday ended up being worth. But again, I can't understand when they finally had all of, so many more eyes from the mainstream media on them this week. They didn't push that Dynamite as hard as they possibly could have.
No,
they didn't
yeah, I saw a lot of people. I saw a lot of people doing the blanket ass, like, "Oh, he's getting attention for AEW with the neck brace." Is he though? Is he? Who's watching Dynamite this week because Tony Khan was in a neck brace getting interviewed by NFL Network? Like, people say that shit, but it doesn't actually promote. It's not actually what
should have been out there promoting all this huge 3-hour live show with all these great matches. And he didn't do any of that.
He should have had Swerve in the background with him. Say, "Hey, I'm here with Swerve, the AEW World Champion." He should have been in that fucking room. You know what I mean? Like, get it. Like, really promote that shit. I mean, it being out there with the neck brace is good. Like, I'm glad he sold it. I'm glad he wore the neck brace. Trust me, I'm fine with it. But that's just attention for the sake of attention. That's just getting social media buzz and algorithm shit. But that's not actually growing. That's not actually promoting. There's a way to do it. There's a way to promote there. But that it was nice that he did it. Again, I'm glad that he went out there with the neck brace. But a lot of people giving a lot of credit to, like, oh man, he's really, that gets attention, but it doesn't grow your business. And
there's nothing wrong.
No.
They need all the attention they can
get. Of course.
What I'm saying is they just missed 2 big opportunities this week because now everything moves on. Everything moves on. It's old news. No one's talking about Tony wearing a neck brace anymore. You had people's attention, and what they end up getting out of it. I mean, it's like the same Dynamite rating they always get. The Rampage did worse than it did piggybacking Dynamite last week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, or rather, the Rampage following on the Rampage on Saturday that followed Collision did worse than the Rampage that followed the previous Saturdays. Is the one that I meant. So it's so from that standpoint, it's just a series of missed opportunities. I don't know. It's baffling sometimes how this company goes about things. It's just baffling. But, they give us great pay-per-views. And when they want to be, they're, a great wrestling company. But listen, this storyline is a little bit of a warning sign. We could be heading back into sports entertainment territory very soon.
Man, the spring is tough. I don't know what goes on every spring in that company, but man, it's not good. We're gonna need another fake G1 here to get things back on track. I don't know what, man.
I just feel like if you sign these big high-priced stars, you should probably push them. I don't know why that's such a wild concept.
I think you're probably right. I think the Ospreay thing has been good up until him going for this Roddy thing. I don't like this. I don't like that.
No, this is a horrible pivot.
He needs to just be in that purview and saying Swerve. He should be challenging Swerve right now and saying, I want the top title in this company, and Swerve can duck him for a little bit, and they might say, hey, Will, you got to do a little bit. But yeah, him like worrying about the Roderick Strong title is no.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they want to keep him away from Swerve for a while. They want to finish the Bryan Danielson feud. I understand all that. He's got business to take care of with the
He's hot as fuck right now. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but there's things you can do that aren't this that keep him hot and keep him in a top mix.
Right, just have him fuck around with the Don Callis family. Him going for a bad title is stupid. Him going for a title that's beneath him is stupid.
No doubt about it.
He can just say, hey, Don, I'm done with the Callis family, and then the Callis guys can beat him down or whatever, and then he's got to one by one work his way through the Callis family. And that eats a whole cycle.
and then Bryan Danielson comes back, and that's a top of the card feud. There's things you could do that are at the top of the card or closer to the top of the card than fucking off at Roderick Strong. That just doesn't make sense to me. Just like Money for the TBS title doesn't make any sense. But you've boxed yourself into a corner with this Tony Storm thing.
Which finally feels like we're progressing a little bit with that, which thank fucking
Tony
God.
Tony is taking her work more seriously.
Yes, she is.
There's been a bit of a pivot with the character. Okay? It's still too hokey for my tastes, but she's taking the physicality more seriously now. So from that standpoint, that's good. But yeah, it's just I found last night's Dynamite just to be weird. It was weird.
It's a very weird show.
It felt awkward. Like
it feels like we're doing that thing again where we did last spring, where it just feels like we're getting pulled in a bunch of weird directions, and nobody. It doesn't feel cohesive. There was a while there where after we were doing the fall and the early winter felt like we were finally back all in the all hands on deck. We're all pulling in one direction. Now it kind of feels like we're pulling in a bunch of different directions again. So
take your biggest stars and push them. It's pretty simple, and then let the chips fall from there. I don't know, but and now Swerve with Christian, that's not going to be the drawing match at the pay-per-view. No. So now you're already slotting this new world champion at minimum like second or third from the top. It's going to be behind whatever the Elite's doing. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not exactly getting the guy off on a great foot. And we all know he's not super over right now, so there's work to do. This isn't a guy who was super over who then you put the title on. This is a guy who was starting to get over, and he has a bit of a groundswell, and you're hoping that the title gets him over the top.
Right. The title.
In order for that to work, right. But in order for that to work, you have to treat him like he's the biggest deal in the company. And I don't know, doing a title match on his first pay-per-view defense, which isn't going to be the true drawing match on the pay-per-view, and if it is, you're in trouble. Is not moving in that direction. So again, if you're going to commit to Swerve and make him the guy, then you have to show some guts and make him the guy. And maybe it won't work. And maybe this is his level, and maybe he won't get over as the true top guy. But that's pro wrestling. That's your job to try to do to accomplish that. And I don't see this Christian match as a step in that direction. It's a placeholder title defense. It's not going to be the top drawing match. I can't imagine it will be. It seems like this stuff with Omega and the Elite is going to be the bigger deal, on the pay-per-view. So I don't know. It's just, this is a very weird pay-per-view cycle that they are in right now. And I am not too optimistic of how this pay-per-view is coming together. If they do Okada Omega at the pay-per-view, I mean, that's absolutely a bigger match than Swerve and Christian. It's not even debatable.
Oh my God.
You can't even have the debate.
No.
You can't even entertain the debate. Is that what you want to do to Swerve right out of the gate?
I would not. But they kind of put him in that position already, where we know there's going to be another match that's bigger on Double or Nothing already. We know it because there's no way that Christian and Swerve is going to be, unless it is, and then that's also like, oh man, I don't know, is that your top match? Is that it? We know there's something bigger.
Well, it goes back to the argument of, if Will Ospreay felt like the hottest and biggest thing in the company, why not pivot and put the title on him instead of Swerve?
Right.
But they didn't choose to do that.
Yeah, no, and I'm fine with Swerve winning, but I want Ospreay to be in that line already, where we know that he is right there, and it's just the Callis guys that are getting in his way, and it's just Danielson's getting in his way. It's just a couple guys, like, you know what I mean? Like we and now it feels like, oh, okay, no, we're keeping him away because we don't want him to suck the energy out of Swerve, where I would rather it be Swerve's on the top of his game, Ospreay's on the top of his game, and it feels like we must hit this collision course. This collision course must occur. These two men must face each other at this title, and it seems like instead we're opting for the let's keep them away from each other for now, just so it doesn't take any attention away from any of the two.
You run a real risk. You run a real risk when you do that with Ospreay and cooling them off. And you might be in a position where 6 months, 7 months, 10 months, a year from now, we're having a conversation with, man, remember how red hot Will Ospreay felt when he came in? And now people don't care about him as much. Maybe they should have just ripped up their plans and put the title on them and strike when the iron was hot. And maybe that would have sparked something. Sometimes shit happens in pro wrestling that derail the plans you had in place, and you got to go with it.
Right.
Sometimes that happens.
But Swerve was also kind of, he wasn't to Will's level, but he was kind of up on that. I put him in a not similar trajectory. I think Will was obviously on a much higher trajectory, but I do think Will was, or a Swerve was getting there too. And I think there's, again, I think there was a way for Swerve to win and for Will to still keep his thing without him. It's this Roderick Strong thing is really what it is.
Yeah, the Roderick pivot is bad. I mean,
right.
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out a way to explain it, but it's just like, no, it's obvious that it's like, no, he could fuck around with the Callis family, he could fuck around with Danielson a little bit more for a couple months. That would appease everybody, but him going for a lesser title just feels absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, it's just I can't deal with that. it's pretty bad. But we'll see. You know, it is AEW. They're the spring, man. I don't know. Every time the spring comes around, they have a
Well, look at it this way. They're going to do something with the Elite and Kenny Omega or whatever. And it's also going to be Mercedes Monet's wrestling debut in the company. You know, Swerve is going to go on last, but realistically, it might be the third most important match from a drawing standpoint. Right? I mean,
yeah.
And that's his first title defense on pay-per-view. You know, it's even more of the argument I made of maybe just they should have just kept the Joe feud alive. It would feel bigger than Christian.
Also, why did the Elite give Christian a title? I don't, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to these things again. We're going into these things again, which
yes.
I don't want to get into. Is like,
these are the problems you run into with authority figures and everything. Why didn't they just give Okada the title shot? Why did they give Christian the title shot? Why didn't they give Jack Perry the title shot? Why didn't they give themselves the title shot? See, now when you do these stupid authority figure stories, you have all the shit that we've complained about with WWE over the years, and now it just doesn't make any sense. And you have all these logic holes. Why would they give Christian a title match? And what did he do to deserve a title match? A month ago, you were using rankings.
Yeah, we had rankings a little bit ago, but
a month ago, you're using rankings. Now there's no rankings, and now Christian just gets a title shot
because the Elite want him
Christian,
to get the title shot, even though they have Jack Perry, who's back here and doesn't have a title. Why would they not just say you have to face Jack Perry now, or Okada, or whatever? Yeah, well. And again, they did this. It's like people being like, you're overthinking it. No, they did the authority figure, we make the matches thing. So no, they got to fucking fill up those logic gaps. They did that.
That's their job, not my job to cover for them.
Right.
That's their job. You're choosing to do heel authority figures.
Right. Then you got to make it make sense, not me.